Hi, my name's Phil. I like talking about politics, and in this video I'd like to discuss a breathtaking piece of Brexit hypocrisy by one of its former masters, Steve Baker, a former chairman, very briefly, of the Eurosceptic ERG cult within the Conservative Party, in which he argues for the very things relating to COVID measures that he argued against when it concerns Brexit. And it's absolutely baffling, isn't it? How the arguments for Brexit are always reversed when it comes to arguments about COVID for these people. But first, if you'd like to be notified of daily news and politics, please subscribe to the channel and click the bell notification icon. So Steve Baker, like a lot of Brexiteers, is in favour of the economic and political vandalism that comes with Brexit, but says that he's opposed to the economic damage and political choices that come with COVID. And there are a lot of Conservatives who express this level of hypocrisy, but few have done it in quite such breathtaking form as Baker did, I think yesterday, may have been the day before, time travel on YouTube and all that. And there was some serious competition for Hypocrite of the Week this week, because Boris Johnson has been sending around a strongly worded letter to his cabinet colleagues, warning them not to bully people. We're not going to accept bullying. Don't you dare bully people. It will make me so angry. When days before, he not only refused to sack the Home Secretary for doing just this, but also compelled those same cabinet colleagues to defend her, because they all came trooping out to defend her. You don't think they all did that off their own bat? And then there was something else as well. John Redwood, another arch Brexiteer, gets a mention every now and then. He wrote this. This is a quote. Project Fear never gives up over Brexit. If they are so concerned about the UK car industry, why have they been so quiet over the collapse of petrol and diesel car sales this year? It took place while we were still in the single market and customs union. And it's like, what? Are you kidding me? How dumb does he think his supporters are that they'll go, oh yeah, car sales have been down this year. Oh yeah, we're still in the EU. That's got nothing to do with anything else that's happening this year, is it? Someone here replied on Twitter in him. He said, if EU freedom of movement is so great, why can't I fly to the South Spain for my holidays? Checkmate, Remainers. To be fair, that is more facepalm than actual hypocrisy. I suppose hypocrisy has to an extent to be self-aware. I know it's not always. There has to be an element of self-awareness, I think. That was just dumb. Or if it's not dumb on his part, how moronic does he think his Brexit supporters are to actually go for that? Seriously. But no, much greater hypocrisy at play here this week. And Brexit, of course, is at the heart of it. So Boris Johnson is laying the ground this week for the COVID measures that will be in place once the second lockdown in England, at any rate, ends next week. Now, although I don't want to suggest that all Brexit supporters are also the type of anti-COVID measures people that Baker exemplifies, because that's clearly not the case, it is always interesting to note that all of those who argue against COVID measures, as espoused by scientists, also argued for a hard Brexit. So although it's not the case that all Brexiteers are also anti-COVID measures, all anti-COVID measures people are pro-Brexit. And as I say, we know that this issue doesn't divide the public like Brexit does. The vast majority of the country regularly show in polls that they support following the scientific advice in order to suppress infection rates. That means there are plenty of Brexit supporters who at least face the scientific facts of dealing with a pandemic and wear their face masks and understand that we don't want to go and kill Granny this Christmas. But as part of Baker's rebellion, he is demanding that the government produce economic analyses that show that the impact of the various measures on the economy are not going to be a net negative. Now, I talked about this earlier, yesterday, I think, maybe the day before, time travel, YouTube, all that. Now, the first thing that may be said about this is that it plays on the ignorance that it is COVID measures that damage the economy and damage businesses. No. What damages the economy, and business leaders are quite clear about this, is the virus. It is the virus that prevents workers being able to go into work. If we'd have just let the virus run rampant, if we'd have done what Boris Johnson suggested back in early March, then we would be in economically much worse shape now. And again, it's interesting to note that we keep taking action late, and as a result of that, our recession is by far the worst in the G7. Of all advanced nations, we are in the worst shape economically. The restrictions, yes, keep customers away too, of course. That's why it's easy to sort of try and follow this line. But the restrictions are only needed because we're not managing the virus in a way that more intelligent countries have managed. And also, when those restrictions have been eased, businesses have not been firing on all cylinders because the virus still exists. You know, so what we needed to do was to adopt behaviours and systems to keep it in check. And the countries that did that, the best, do you know what? Sort of got away without a recession, or if they did, it was just a barely below 0%. So if we took a zero COVID approach, then we wouldn't have suffered that huge recession that we're now doing and continuing to do, as ably demonstrated, as I say, by countries that did pursue a zero COVID policy and are doing better than us economically. You know, things like, you know, wearing face masks and having a comprehensive, reliable test and trace program. But where the hypocrisy comes in is in the suggestion during an interview that we shouldn't apply any COVID measures if it means causing economic harm. But Steve, mate, what if something causes economic damage but saves a load of lives? No, the economy is all that matters. Okay. So what if the government had a policy, just, you know, hypothetically, had a policy that meant causing certain severe economic damage over many years, much greater than COVID over a long period of time? Well, I mean, they should drop that policy, shouldn't they? Okay. So when are we going to start supporting rejoining the EU then? Because you don't get to argue that we shouldn't adopt life-saving measures because you think it might cause economic damage, even though we know it actually doesn't. It saves the economy in the long term. But you don't get to do that when you are also supporting the single most serious act of economic sabotage in British history. In fact, when it comes to the economic analyses of Brexit, Baker is one of those who said at the time, just like Michael Gove and the other lot, oh, no, they're not very accurate though, we shouldn't really use them, it's totally inaccurate. But the analyses that he is now asking for would be produced by the same people with less time and data to run them as well. So exactly how would that make them accurate in this case? So it's accurate when you want to use them, it's not accurate when you don't like the results. And as a seasoned politician, of course, Baker's been in it for a while. You know, he didn't just try the economic angle. Never just have one line of attack in politics. You need as many arguments as you can fabricate. So he then took up the issue of attacking people's individual freedoms. Now, although I don't agree with them, I am going to say here, I am not going to disparage this argument from certain people. Hypocrites like Baker, I will absolutely disparage it. But not for some people. It depends how consistent you are. Now, I accept that it is a genuine point of debate about how you view the balance between the need to impose social restrictions to prevent a human calamity and how far you accept an already authoritarian government deciding when and where, you know, and for what reason you can leave your own home. It is a debate, more for people on the right of politics, but I accept that the discussion can be genuine for some people. For some people it's just an excuse, like for Baker, but for some people it's genuine and in the public interest to hold. However, in pursuing this line, Baker tried to refer to the European Convention of Human Rights. Is this the same European Convention of Human Rights that Steve Baker has attacked many times before and wants abolished? Yeah, that's the one. If he gets his way, and it is certainly plausible that he will, those very human rights will be stripped from us all, as well as the EU freedoms that are already going, before the next general election. So, although I can accept that there are people who will genuinely debate whether or not certain social constraints are worth it or not, even though I've made my mind up, what I won't accept is that someone who, could they work their will, would have torn up the Convention of Human Rights years ago. They wouldn't be in place. They wouldn't be there for him to read from in this interview, and wouldn't be available to be used in a debate for why we shouldn't impose curbs on social behaviour in order to control the spread of the virus. And this aspect screams loudly for me of the general hypocrisy amongst Conservatives. They are happy to deny freedoms to many others. They're not freedom loving. They make out they are because they're always banging on about it, but they are not freedom loving. They happily deny freedoms to others. I mean, they're always talking about banging people up, for example. This is why many of them support Brexit and support the abolition of freedoms. Priti Patel was even allowed to tweet out how great it was that we were ending freedom of movement, as well as abolishing other international agreements as well. What they don't believe is them personally losing freedoms. As soon as they perceive a freedom under attack, that's different. And those who are losing something should just suck it up. That's what they have the attitude when it's someone else losing a freedom. What's wrong with people these days? They're all soft. Where's that blitz spirit? We're breeding generations of snowflakes. How come they can't just show a bit of stoicism and stop whining about having no job, no food, no heating and no home? And then they're told that they should maybe avoid going round to grannies until the vaccine's in place. And maybe you'd like to put a piece of cloth over your face when you go shopping, and they flip their lids. And for me, what this stark lack of consistency belies is the fact that these people are simply not at all honest. Because some of them can be stupid enough to have this sort of double think going on. Quite a lot of them are not. And if you're not that stupid, then you have to be dishonest. It's not possible to say that you welcome the economic devastation of Brexit, but that our COVID response should only be based on economic concerns. It's all, which by the way, if you did do that, you would still argue for the measures. It's also not possible to say that human rights should be abolished, but that human rights dictate that we shouldn't try and save vulnerable family members. Of course, on both fronts, his arguments are fundamentally wrong. Countries have imposed the strongest measures and suffered the least economic damage. And I have yet to see a legal expert argue that the measures proposed in any way contravene human rights laws. Now, there are issues about the way that the government have introduced new criminal offences in the past. Certainly, there are definitely arguments there. You know, if Baker wants to pick the government up on rights, he should have had more of an issue with the Department for Health creating new criminal offences with only a few minutes' notice and no parliamentary scrutiny. Now, I'm not saying he was wholly in favour of this, by the way, but did the Tory MPs kick up a massive fuss about this? Not really, no. All we had from the likes of Baker was a bit of chuntering about it, sure, no action. And you see the same thing with news of the impending vaccines. Oh, isn't science wonderful? Aren't we glad we've got modern science? Brilliant way to the scientists. Different tune when it comes to following scientific advice, though, because the vaccine's something that some bugger else has developed. They didn't have to put any effort into that. It didn't cost them anything. But actually following the scientific advice, well, that means I have to do something. What do experts know about it? No, I'm following that advice. That's ridiculous. Politicians should make the decisions. We're sick of experts. And if Steve Baker really has a burning desire to base everything on sound economics, I imagine he's really annoyed that his boss is now going to give £29 million to celebrate the economic disaster that is Brexit in the spending review. Oh, we're going to have a £29 million piss up to celebrate the knackering of our economy. Because this is what the Conservatives are now. The party that celebrates wasting vast sums of public money, trashing the economy, and then spending tens of millions more on a big party to mark the event. But there we are. Those are my thoughts, or ramblings, or rants, whatever you want to call them. Hope you found the video interesting. If you did, don't forget to click the like button. If you'd like to support the channel further, please also click the Patreon link for details. And until next time, I'll see you later.